with something that, you know,
points out something.
It's actually one millimetre longer. You know.
That weld has moved 5 degrees or something. Indeed.
Something along them lines. I hope you're listening, Spalders. He's not here.
He was sending me rude messages yesterday about...
He's been in Rome.
Has he? He told me he was going to Brands Hatch.
This weekend he has, but he's been in Rome. The past tense was used there, Jules.
Indeed.
And here is Eugene Laverty's camp that are getting his bike ready for FP4, and this is his big off. That was hard. This is going to get harder yet as he gets rolled into the ground by the...
That's a proper beating up, isn't it? That really is ugly.
It was those last few moments that the camera lingered on him yesterday, and he didn't move for a while. Pole Espargaro moving swiftly on.
10th quickest yesterday.
If you've just tuned in, by the way, Eugene is all right. Wife Pippa says that he's perfectly okay around the paddock at the moment, but he's sitting this one out because protocol from the Japanese medical director is that in Japan they like to have a little longer to assess that kind of bashing that he's just had. So FP4, we expect him to be out on track.
Mike Jones has improved on his yesterday's time by a second already. We had this discussion in the car on the way up.
Yeah, he's been, I think yesterday, considering all of the things I said earlier, the electronics, the tyres, the brakes, the great story was that he came in yesterday and complained that there was something wrong with the front brake because it jammed on, I think is the words that he got close to using. Oh, he did a big stoppie, wasn't it? That was it. He suddenly did an almighty stoppie into one of the sectors here. Came in and they realised that he used the front brake like a good old steel brake man.
Yes.
And got such a handful of it. But with carbon, it's a completely different kettle of fish altogether. And he just grabbed a big handful.
Yeah. Brad Smith has gone 2/10 quicker than he went yesterday. That has got to be hurting something horrible.
Yeah, I mean, I have no comment to make about that. I think it's a bit too early for Bradley, to be honest. He's travelled. I just think that what he's probably done, because you know what Bradley's like, he's a real thinker. Probably the progress that leg had been making over the week preceding actually getting on an aeroplane and coming here was so great that he figured he'd meet the progress by the time they got to Japan. Does that make any sense? Like he'd catch up, the progress would catch up, and he'd be a little fitter than perhaps he is at this moment on a bike. Mind you, there is no exercise like being on a motorbike. We're actually getting stuff to bend and work.
That's probably part of the thinking. Hector Barbera, half a second quicker than he went yesterday. That's what Neil Hodgson was saying in the car on the way here. These guys, like Jones, like Barbera, a night to sleep on it, to let the information absorb. Damaged Petrucci.
Yeah.
And Hector said yesterday that everything was different from his Avintia custom bike. Everything is different. And he found that what he couldn't do was feel the front end, and that was what they had to work on today.
Is Oyama replacing the damaged Danny, running the 73. Bit of pressure, I've got to say, for Oyama to step out of a spectator. I saw him this morning, a very polite man. He wanted to get through the crowd. You know, it's amazing me when we're in Japan, just the manners of the people generally. No one pushes and shoves. Everyone's quite polite to get through barriers. And he stood behind, he was obviously in a hurry, he stood behind a load of chatting Englishmen to get through the barrier, of which there are many. It's a maze of them. But nobody jumps over barriers, nobody breaks their way through here, do they? Can you imagine this in Italy?
Certainly not. However, Hero has lived in Barcelona for a long time. And this is Mike Jones. Getting a bit...
Sponsored by Troy Bayliss back in Superbike Australia.
0.8 of a second quicker than he went yesterday already.
Here's your man that we were talking about earlier.
Nakasuga-san. With that dragon on his crash helmet.
I'll tell you what, crash helmet designs have come on a long way, haven't they? Sometimes perhaps too much. And the number 21 familiar, of course.
I did a misservice to Mike Jones. Thank you, Neil Hodgson. He's gone 1.8 seconds quicker as Mike Jones than he went yesterday. Thanks for the maths.
Cal Crutchlow, as I said earlier, a little critical perhaps of people trying to get the same kind of front end grip out of a Michelin as they did with Bridgestone before, so everyone's settling down now in this second day here then on Bridgestones. Of course, Michelin are tested here. Colin is with us in the back of the commentary box. In fact, those of you that thought about perhaps going to bed after this MotoGP session and perhaps not taking an opportunity with Moto2, I can tell you that we've got the comedy half hour coming up, because it's Colin Edwards and Neil Hodgson who will be in charge of Moto2 commentary.
Hang on, a comedy half hour, it's a 40-minute session, isn't it?
I just love your... have another donut, you'll be all right.
Right, we've discussed that now we can carry on. Jorge Lorenzo at work. Fastest man yesterday, 0.1 slower than Marquez in this session. And don't forget, this is the session that does the seeding for qualifying. So you need to be in the top 10 to be seeded directly through to the second qualifying session. But at the moment, the people who aren't in it, Scott Redding, Nakasuga, Miller, Bradley. So Hector Barbera has got himself into it. Bradle and Bautista are just outside the top 10 on the, we think, significantly improved Aprilias over the past couple of races.
They've looked very, very good. Misano, as you might have expected at Misano, the Aprilia coming on good. It's been late though, hasn't it? There were a lot of promises made early on in the season. We thought that they would certainly have an upgrade power-wise, but it didn't seem to transpire very quickly. Here's Hector again. Hector Barbera then. 1.5 seconds off at the moment, but just inside that critical top 10. The combined 3. Oh, hang on a second. That inside curb, we saw it yesterday as well. That just catches people out. You turn it in a bit tight over those ripple strips and down you go. Sam Lowe's yesterday, I seem to remember as well. Didn't he have a massive moment there through the front on that turn in at one point? When the sun comes down later in the day, that is a really tricky part of the track. Straight into your face the sun is. Jorge.
Not quicker than yesterday yet. Most of the factory men have not yet improved on their Friday times.
But we've still got 27 3/4 minutes left of this session. I wonder who it's going to be. It's tough now to get in this top 10. There are always 2 riders outside of it that potentially could just breach that top 10.
As the screens go up, secrecy time in Honda. So let's just talk about our Twitter poll for today for a moment, if we may. There's the beckoning cat. We talked about
normally they've got the battery-powered one with it swinging its arm.
They have in my local takeaway.
And everyone else's.
Absolutely. Our Twitter poll, Keith. Yesterday, 4 different manufacturers filled the first 4 places in free practice, separated by only 0.152 seconds. So who's going to be on pole? Will it be a Ducati, a Honda, a Suzuki or a Yamaha, we're asking you, at BT Sports Moto Grand Prix. Currently, the voting goes 40% Yamaha, 30 Honda, 20 Ducati and 10 for Suzuki.
Tell you what, Ducati's a bit of a shock being only 20.
Yeah, they were a quarter second ahead yesterday. Until Lorenzo banged in that...
right at the very end.
Yep.
But the shock, I think, this weekend, for me, bearing in mind what a stop-start place is how good the Suzuki's been. Maverick Vinales is right on it again.
Yes, massively better than last year, and of course they've got the seamless gearbox.
Which has obviously tidied up the entry into corners and the like.
Exactly what Maverick said yesterday. He said it's night and day going into the hard braking corners.
There's Aleix Espargaro on the other Suzuki. Meanwhile, Marc Marquez starting his second run with 26 minutes left before the flag and his FP3, and as Jules has just said, the 3 FPs, 3 practices, are combined time-wise, and the top 10, quickest top 10 times go through to qualifying 2. Everyone else goes into qualifying 1 as normal. Nothing changes here. The Japanese Grand Prix, I've got to say, it's gone by so quick, Julian. Already our first day. This is you just kind of eat, sleep, race, repeat, don't you? Here, it's a proper place where that's all you do all the way through.
It's a long commute out here to the countryside in Motegi from the cities we stay in, where the hotels are. You either stay in Mito or Utsunomiya, equidistant from the circuit. So you're either commuting, you're at the circuit, you're commuting back, you're eating, you're sleeping.
Getting over the for us anyway, the European side of things, it's the longest run coming down this part of the world, whereas the Aussies have it slightly easier, Malaysians obviously as well. It's slightly closer to time zone. Oh, hang on a minute. Valentino and Aleix.
Think Misano.
Wonder what the doctor's got up his sleeve here, because yesterday FP1 he was shining. He was right on it in FP1, straight out the box. FP2, you just wonder, don't you, whether the team are again working on race pace. If they're looking, that's what they're so good at.
That's what you always suspect, don't you, looking at Valentino. They're only worried about Sunday afternoon.
He is a Sunday man, as everybody says. Not everybody,
but he's only had one win here in the Moto Grand Prix era, one on a 500 as well.
And that's a long time ago. Lorenzo, though, 3 wins.
3.
Yeah.
Pedrosa, that's suddenly absent. 3.
Well, that's going to make it slightly easier, I suppose. One man easier. And as
to get into the top 10,
the top 10,
saying,
yeah, I think I am, absolutely, to get through. Oyama is going to struggle to get in the top 10, to be frank.
Of course, yeah. But yes, getting on a Moto Grand Prix bike as a 34-year-old on Sunday morning.
Well, just ask Neil. Getting on that Ducati and having a ride round, and Neil still does a lot of mileage on motorcycles.
Indeed.
On a lot of racetracks, and the tear in his eye said it all, I think, at the end of that session. He got to get off the bike. I think that's what the tear in the eye was for.
There's Bradley, just trying to
look at the seat pad.
Yeah.
Look how far he's jacked up in the air. Much thicker seat pad as well.
2 operations to repair soft tissue damage to a knee. Really, really serious injury for a sportsman. Much more significant and serious than a long bone break.
Well, I think that's as we all spoke about yesterday in here, I think most people would have preferred a bone break to a soft tissue injury like that. But he's given it, as you would expect, Bradley gritting his teeth and getting on with it. They're not pretty, them wings on the Honda either, are they?
They're not pretty at all, though, really.
It's not over yet with the wing situation, you know.
Of course it's not.
There's more going on. Everybody says they're banned for next year, but I've been hearing all sorts of things about so hard to legislate for.
Indeed. And Gigi Dall'Igna will find a way.
Uh-oh. Agasuga's dumped the development bike down at turn 10. That's that horrible little 40-mile-an-hour hairpin at the top of the hill.
About the slowest corner of the year, I think.
There he is.
Marching away. Hardly a scrape on his leathers.
Blotting his copybook there. Oh, that's embarrassing for him.
Hardly a scrape on it, Keith.
So easy to do it, a tiny little hairpin. Not quick. Are we going to see it, I wonder? Answer no.
Where's Vinales? He's on a 46.2.
That was a chattery old front end there, wasn't it, on Tito's Honda? The old suspension just chattering away underneath him at the front end.
Where is Tito? He's 19th. He's improved by a couple of hundredths this morning on his time from yesterday.
He's not settled in on this motorcycle really, has he, Jules? He just hasn't come to him at all.
No.
I don't want to be critical of him because you know how much effort he's putting in, but you know, he's back next year, as far as I'm aware. He's definitely back next year, but you know, I've got some work to do. Jack Miller, you saw him out there. Jack looked like he put a bit of bark on in his... whereas, if we make the comparison with Bradley Smith, they both had a bit of time off. Bradley Smith looks even thinner than he did before he started, so he's making sure his diet's right.
Bradley's lost 3 kilograms.
3 kilograms? He didn't have 3 kilograms spare anywhere.
Exactly.
But Jack looks like he's put a little bit on to me. He's just... he's obviously not kept off the barbie while he's had his time off. Here's Cal Crutchlow over the line. Cal at the moment in 5th place on the combined times. He's just gone up to 5th actually with a 45.
He improved his time, Keith, and stayed in 5th. You're right, first time. And he was 5th on the overnight times as well.
Actually, he's not gone any quicker. It's only Marquez and Hector Barbara who's gone quicker in this session, along with Scott Redding, Rabat, Oyama, obviously, and Bradley and Mike Jones.
I meant, sorry, best time of his session, not overall.
Quite big crowd in here as well, Jules. Again, yesterday, probably because the weather hadn't been very nice in this region for some considerable time. They had a day out with the family yesterday.
I was told years ago they limit the crowd here because of access. They could sell more tickets.
What happened to Mugello then on that front?
Mugello is in Italy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was thinking of the limiting access situation. I mean, that's so Japanese, isn't it? I mean, because here, compared with Mugello, it's
the M6.
Indeed. Obviously, Honda don't need the money. Would that be the point to be made?
I'm not sure.
Because it's a Ferrari track, isn't it, Mugello?
It's owned by Ferrari.
Maybe they do need the money.
Well, I can only draw that conclusion, Keith.
Viñales. Plenty of wing again on the Suzuki this time out.
Yep. The little triple decker they run.
Yeah, but they've got the big one on the top now as well, Julian. Big carbon fibre one. Do you remember last year? Was it last year where this guy got himself in a massive tank slapper and he got to the end of the straight and he hadn't got any brakes? It banged the pads
last
back.
Year or the year before?
Might have been. No, it might have been the year before, you know, because it was.
Yeah, going down to turn 5, he had a tank slapper.
Yeah.
Going down to the right hander under the bridge, and
the weight of the pads had banged the pistons back in the calipers on the front end, and he just had to take 2 pumps at it. Of course, you can't have. You ain't got time for 2 pumps. Here is the Vizioso. A lot of wags have been mentioning that. Wouldn't it be a shame for him if Hector got up to speed rather quickly? Those that don't ride motorbikes.
Yeah, I talked to Dobby last night, and he was exuding the air of a man of quiet confidence, would be the correct cliche. He was extremely happy with his day's work.
Ducati looked good, and again, anything where you're going up the gearbox and then all the way back down the gearbox, the Ducati surely it just keeps driving forward, doesn't it? It's certainly got the horsepower for the job round here.
He said that is maximum wing he has on. That is the full package. There is no more. And then who's that?
That's a big off for Alvaro. Turn 3. That was a favourite corner yesterday, wasn't it, for fallers?
The second hard braking effort of the lap.
So Bautista has dumped it down at turn 3. That's what, 50 mile an hour at the apex of the corner. Meanwhile,
we all go quiet watching Marc Marquez now in the manner of Colin Edwards.
Colin started it. Tell you what, track looks like it's cleaning up now, doesn't it? Look at all the lines everywhere. Yesterday, you couldn't tell where you were, but Michelin's putting down those big dark lines everywhere.
And it's snapping on him, isn't it? That horrible tendency to flick on him as he gets on the brakes down into turn 11.
This is a really tricky final part to the course here. It really is a...
Excellent.
It's going to make your tummy rumble, Jules.
I'll be back in a minute, Keith. So just going to the noodle store.
We haven't had breakfast yet. Marquez, Lorenzo, the Vizioso, Viñales at this moment in time. Still only going quicker has been Marc Marquez, while Alvaro gets a lift back on that resplendent 80s retro style.
Yep. It's not an 80s CBX 550, it's a modern CB 400 painted in the style of the old 550.
Yeah, you did a double backflip when we drove in this morning, and there was that beautiful little 400 parked at the
400 V4.
Yeah,
the VFR.
Butterfly. Yes. That's because someone hasn't quite looked up the name for it yet. It's going to be in the slipstream of Jorge, getting dragged around the turn in a moment.
I have to say it was an absolutely mint VFR 400 as well.
You see them out here, don't you?
Well, that's the license category, so 400 is what you can ride without jumping through a million hoops.
Yeah, coming to a country near you. Cal Crutchlow behind Jorge Lorenzo.
And Cal looking...
Cal has established himself as one of these top MotoGP riders now. In these last few months, we never doubted his ability, but I think now worldwide he's in there. He's right at the very top of his game. Yeah. And he is a proper top-line MotoGP racer now.
And he now understands that, knows it, and his bearing, and the way he just talks to the press and everything. Yeah, it's just that little bit different from what it was. And I
don't think it's a thing about belief. I think he's always had that. I think it's about perspective, perhaps. And I think Willow may have had a little bit to do with that.
Now you're talking about his new baby, aren't you?
Well, I think racing, the whole thing is in perspective once you've achieve that particular achievement. Okay, there was a... You missed that, George. You were looking the other way. But
I was.
They didn't look at that happy to be within the garage there. Meanwhile, steadied up a bit at the moment, hasn't it? We've got 15 minutes left. We're both of us are looking at monitors trying to see where the next...
Are we waiting another 5-8 minutes to put in the soft tyre, if necessary? And
I think we've got to look at the cusp, haven't we? The 8, 9, 10th of that top 10. Bradle and Bautista outside. That's Bautista's off has been might have curtailed his effort to get to the top 10.
Your point about we haven't got Iannone, we haven't got Pedrosa.
Yeah.
All of a sudden there's always some natural cut-off for the top 10, especially with people like Bradley Smith being injured.
Well, yeah, and this is an opportunity. He just got ready to go straight through to qualifying 2, but he hasn't gone on well this weekend.
No, he's gone a third of a second quicker than he went yesterday, but he's still 1.7 off Marquez's time.
Is Bradley gritting his teeth and getting quicker again on a personal best as he comes to the line? Bradley then top 20 now for Bradley Smith.
Only 6,000 slower than Hiro Oyama. And in front of Baz and Jones. Mike Jones, the young Aussie, is only 0.4 slower than Loris Baz.
Tell you what, Mike Jones is doing, I think, a good job. Okay, he's 4 seconds off.
Yeah.
Top slot. For a man who's never ridden the bike, never ridden the electronics, never ridden the tyres, never ridden the track, never ridden the brakes, which is probably one of the most important things, and compared with what he had to say yesterday about them.
And you looked at the name, none of us really had heard of the young man.
None of us really had heard. Actually, put that into proper perspective, when it was when I was first told yesterday, I came round the entire paddock and asked everybody, Mike Jones, what's that mean? And nobody, even Gav.
Yeah.
Gav is our default, isn't he? At the end of the day, we all try out Gav, and even Gav had never heard of it.
Which means as an Australian Superbike champion, it tells you something about where their championship is nowadays. And also it means he hadn't come out of Oz to ride the A-Tower and stuff like that on a good bike, where we would have noticed him. And you hope that the lad would be able to enjoy this weekend. And I now think he will. He's really, really done as good a job as you could hope for.
Well, 22 years old. He's mature enough to be taking this on, there's no doubt about it, but Troy Bayliss, his man, I wonder how much Troy had to do with that. He must have pressed the Ducati quite severely to have got that done.
I suspect a phone call or two.
Yeah. I wonder, is Bayliss here? Has anybody seen Bayliss?
Haven't seen him.
Shaking heads all around us here in the commentary box. Coming up, of course, after this will be Moto 2, and it will be the Hodgson and Edwards show. Those two are together for commentary for Moto 2, which... I think I might just stick around to listen to that at the back, I must say. They're both drinking lots of coffee, and that just is going to put Hodgie on the rev limiter, that's for sure. He's going to be wide open come Moto 2, so if you were thinking about going to bed, don't. You should stay up for it, it might make you giggle. Meanwhile, we'll look into the Aprilia garage. And Bradle is trying to explain the way the motorcycle is performing compared with throttle movements by the look of it, as we look at Johnny Hernandez, who sticks his foot out to come down pit lane. Interesting that it seems like money is going to persist in this particular camp next year, as Carol Abram looks like he's making a comeback to MotoGP next year, courtesy of a bit of cash, it would seem the cynics, who are quite accurate, would say. So
in place of the man we're looking at,
indeed. And I mean, you know, I think Johnny's done a pretty good job, but
he's had a bad year this year compared to last year.
So there's the excuse. But Carol Abram, I'm afraid, you know, as much as respect as I can muster at this point, has had his chance, has had his go, hasn't been able to perform, and I can't see anything changing next year. And I will be the first to be happy to be proved completely wrong, because Carol Abram is a thoroughly nice man, but cash can't usually buy you a ride.
But no longer a Moto Grand Prix rider.
I'd have said not. And what's he done in World Superbikes?
Very little. Alicia Spargo on a personal best. What tyres has he got in? Hard front?
Aleix is
still not quicker than yesterday.
No. He's 6th at the moment. Everyone else of the main runners pretty much down in the pits.
Yeah. 10 minutes to go, Keith, and it's
yeah, all action in the moment.
3 men on out laps, and all the action's in the pits as they prepare the last run.
I suppose it depends on what you're looking for. I think FP4 might be, as usual, a bit interesting.
Yes.
This time we should see Eugene back out on track. Eugene Laverty's scheduled to come back out for FP4. He's sitting this one out because the doctors have said he's got to. Eugene Laverty at the moment,
well, 14th overall.
Overall, yeah. After his time yesterday, so he won't. Where was he yesterday? After that, I think he was. He was 13th yesterday. So somebody's just tipped him at that, which was Scott Redding, of course. Scott Redding has put himself up to 13th today.
Valentino got up his sleeve. Scott Redding's on a personal best.
Yeah, Scott Redding needs to bump himself into the top 10.
Very much so.
He really should be in the top 10, given the opportunity here in Japan this weekend with the sitter-outers.
And the walking wounded.
Here he is. Down the hill from that hairpin.
It's personal best all the way, but that third sector's not nice to him, is it?
Down into that turn 11, the 90-degree corner, and then that series that I love this part of the track. This probably is my favourite bit. As Valentino crosses the line.
No change for him. Waiting for Scott to come across the line.
Here he is. Will that put him in the top 10, I wonder, or did he lose too much time? Well, it's a personal best, but he stays 13th.
Yep, 1.7 off. Where's his teammate, Petrucci? He's 1.2 off, so there's a gap that Scott doesn't need to see.
Head down, though. Scotty with 8.5 minutes left to go of this free practice 3 here this morning in Motegi.
Thank you to Zach Curtis on Twitter. Mike Jones wild-carded at the Phillip Island World Superbike this year.
So he's got some international form then.
So there is some form. That's yes, Zach Curtis, thank you for that.
Well, he's got to be looking forward to
well, will Iannone be back next week?
I just think that with what I have read in the press release and reading between the usual lines, that injury, you wonder how it slipped past them in the first place, and he carried on riding. I just think that at the moment we need to scrutinise our medical protocols.
Yeah, there's a difference, you know. If it's just a matter of dealing with pain, that's a matter for the rider to decide whether he can or not, as it with Miguel Oliveira in Moto 2. But when it becomes with Iannone, we're talking about an injury to the spine, and then we're talking about concussion, brain trauma. This is stuff that has to be taken very, very, very seriously, and if you must err on the side of caution.
Well, I think that our protocols have just slipped a bit behind the worldwide movement towards greater scrutiny.
In other sports,
yeah,
yes.
I mean, I think our scrutiny is just, it's a bit 1980s in comparison with the up-to-date stuff that we're getting in all other sports.
And go and look at rugby,
any of them,
ice hockey, Aussie rules.
But I'm thinking more motorsport, NASCAR, IndyCar, all of those guys. You know, the lower, I could say lower level, but I mean lower than Formula 1 level, if you like.
Sure.
And it's technology that is not particularly expensive that they can employ to, particularly in a head injury situation, readily and not expensively.
You're talking of G-force monitors and such like.
Exactly. And it's unobtrusive. It's not something that's going to disturb a rider or a team in any way, shape or form. It's just going to be beneficial to all. It'll be interesting to see how that goes. You know, airbags are going to be made compulsory for riders in 2018.
Yes.
So everyone's going to have airbags within their... the reason they've announced that now is so all the manufacturers outside of Dainese and Alpine Stars, who will have their own systems, whether they provide systems to other manufacturers or whether other manufacturers have systems themselves, they've got an extra year to do.
Dainese already licensed Furiat for their technology.
But it's given, they've been quite clever. The technical direction have been pretty smart in giving enough people enough time to. Yeah. But it is compulsory. Airbags are compulsory from 2018.
Yep.
Oh, dearie me! Jorge Lorenzo down on the deck, and that looks like that hurt. So Jorge is winded. Which corner is that? 2. Ha! Blimey, that's just a, what, 55, 60 mile an hour. It's got to be a high side, surely. How far out of the corner is he? But that's made him...
leg.
Yeah, that's horrified the local supporters of Jorge Lorenzo, that is for certain. He is proper limping there. That looks serious enough to get on that.
Dear me, that is a big moment in the season, potentially.
Here we go.
What happened?
Let's take a look at this. So, in. Taps it in. Yeah, it was a high side and a big one as well. Oh, take that. Big Daddy wouldn't have liked that in wrestling. Incredible. Massive, massive slap to the back. Jorge Lorenzo. Here we go again. Oof. Just as he tapped it in. But that back slap that he had straight on the tarmac, I'm amazed he's not so winded he could hardly get his breath, because normally those ones where you get it on the back, it knocks every bit of wind out of you.
We're having a close look at his left hand as well as he was carried away.
Was there anything that didn't get slapped down there, Jules?
No.
Because that looked like a dead horizontal slap to every part of his body.
And then a bounce just to
rub it in.
Yeah. It's that vertical component again. It's, you know, that we were talking about. It's not speed, it's the height you drop from.
Tell you what.
And you know that if he went to get on the stretcher, he wasn't made to sit on it by the medics or the marshals, you know.
Yeah, it was offered up and gratefully taken. So, Dovizioso piles his way round. Oh, tell you what, we've seen some crashes this weekend from some big names.
Yeah, just what Alicia Spargo said yesterday, there were always some big crashes here, and he didn't know why.
Yeah, but we've got a few big, and I don't think we're done yet. We've got a long way to go today. It's qualifying, of course.
FP4
still to come.
Qualifying, yep.
Everything live here on BT Sport. Blimey.
Right, there's 3.5 minutes of the session left, Keith. A few personal bests popping up, not least from Mike Jones, who is, I think, doing a cracking job. The definition of dropped in the deep end is what's happened to Mike Jones this weekend.
And Oyama coming back is one as well, I suppose, having spectated here yesterday, being asked to come back. But yeah, you're right, I think Jonesy takes that fairly well. Yeah, I have a load of stones in your face, Bradle.
Thanks, Hector. And that is Jorge Lorenzo standing and talking to the medics.
He's about to get on the back of that CB400. He'll come back to the pits, and I suspect straight to the Clinica.
Well, the medics will direct him there, won't they? He'll be required to go there after that.
Yeah, that's the way that they review it. They review it on screen, and the medical director says, yep, we'll take you to the medical centre, please. If he summonses you, you've got no choice. You've got to go there.
Yep. Barbara and Dovey have just done their best laps of the session. There they are.
Plenty of wing on both of them this week.
Yeah, you know it was a late deal, don't you, when the leathers weren't done in time.
The Vintia blue, somewhat striking when it comes to the colours, as Cal Crutchlow runs that a little hot. Cal Crutchlow losing time there.
He's half a second off Marquez's time.
Let's see whether
at the moment.
It looked good, but I wonder how much he just lost. 0.2 in Sector 2. Sector 3 looked a little bit lively as we come towards the end of it.
End of Sector 3 is just when he's got round the hairpin of turn 10. And as soon as he straightens up, he'll be through the beam, over the marker rather, and there you go. Yeah, he lost those 2 tenths, Keith.
Yeah, he was out miles wide, and that was the problem that as we get to the end of the 90-degree turn, and then under the
snap threatening,
under the bridge, and back through Victory and on to the finish line. So Cal Crutchlow looking a little lively in the end of this lap. That's Jack Miller again. That's his second one of the session,
and that's at the left-hander to go up the hill to the hairpin.
Crutchlow goes quicker and goes second.
Only 0.04 slower than Mark Marquez.
Tell you what, he picked up time even in that fourth sector with it all lively.
So if he can sort that third sector out.
Well, that was just one of those, you know, ran it a bit hot into the turn, but that's easy for him to sort out.
Dovey for once having to let Hector Barbera follow him because he's the teammate.
Here's Lorenzo back to the back of the garage. So Jorge Lorenzo is still a good high kicker. Medical centre for him then. Meanwhile,
Bradle into the top 10.
got Redding just outside it, somewhat.
And in no, Petrucci's just gone back into it. I was about to say that Redding was in front of Petrucci, but that's just altered.
Yeah, that's he kept his points, even though Petrucci took him out last time in Aragon. He kept his points in the battle for the GP 17 for next year, of course. Here is Redding over the line. What's that do for him?
Improves in time, enough. Not a place.
Yeah, not enough. He kept his points. What was it, 9 points, I think, in the GP17 battle, if you remember. Petrucci and he are vying for the GP17 that comes to their team next year. One's going to get a brand new factory bike next year. One's going to stick with the old bike. Out comes the checker flag. The man in the gloves is back, as he is every year. He's got his racing gloves on to perform duties at
Rossi
the checker flag
and
point.
Barbara and Dovizioso so close in times, this trio.
Let's see what happens when they cross the line then. Marquez on top still. Crutchlow has been stunning up into second place last time round.
He's on a lap, he's cruising at the moment, is Calza. That was his last shot.
Bautista and Nagasuga have gone through. Nagasuga a faller earlier.
Bradley improves again, as this is the blast.
Stays top 20, but to the line comes Valentino Rossi then. Improves. So does Barbara. Look at that. Hector Barbara right up behind Andrea Dovizioso, the other factory Ducati. That's a result from Hector. So maybe all those people that were teasing about Hector possibly taking it to Dovi.
1.7 seconds quicker than yesterday, Hector Barbara.
Getting used to it then.
That's what he said, Lars.
Vinales.
Different motorbike. It bears no relation to the motorbike I normally ride.
It's Petrucci again, but Vinales getting a better time in as well. Everyone's improved so far, except Jorge Lorenzo and Maverick Vinales on their times of yesterday. So everyone has improved.
And Aleix goes top Suzuki there, ahead of Vinales. What's Scott got?
Oh, just outside. Qualifying one for you then, Scotty. You'll be annoyed about that, 100th of a second.
And Petrucci is intense, his teammate, just to really rub salt in the wound.
That's going to hurt.
That is going to hurt more than anything.
Marc Marquez, I'll tell you something that was good yesterday. You watched how sharp these Hondas are at launch, and watch how bad Valentino Rossi was yesterday.
Twice.
Both the ones we saw, it was, and even then it was tentative, wasn't it? But the Hondas just look like weapons off the line. Whether that will translate to race starts, we'll find out tomorrow.
Well, we'll find out tomorrow, Keith, at 5:45 a.m. when the Moto Grand Prix race kicks off. We start at 12:30 a.m. with warm-ups. Everything on BT Sport 2 as usual.
Look at that Honda. Just the front wheel skipping. That's just blasts off the line as the forlorn sight of something about a tatty old tow truck with a factory M1 on it that contrasts so well, or badly even.
This is why. God, that is an old-fashioned.
Look at that on the back. I tell you what, if ever there was a reason to make airbags compulsory, we've just seen it again. There's Lynn Jarvis, managing director of Yamaha Racing, who's been in to check on what's going on. But if ever there was a reason for compulsory airbags, you've just seen it.
Yep. The technology is available, it is there, it is developed.
And now it's compulsory from 2018.
Yeah. I think you're right. Technical direction have allowed the clothing manufacturers the time to.
That's what he said.
I
asked yesterday. It was about developing the right systems for all manufacturers rather than just Alpine Stars and Dainese who are ahead of the game.
Who don't want to license their technology to big competitors. Small private companies like Furrigan, who they regard as a family affair, they're happy to license.
They have enough trouble arguing among themselves.
Good style, sir.
Oh, with the San Carlo jacket on as well. Dovi ending up third, just ahead of his teammate now this weekend, Hector Barbara, who's up.
But Dovi only 0.07 slower than Marquez.
Yeah, which you've got to say is quite pleasing from the Ducati side of.
It's just like yesterday when we had the top four separated by, what, a tenth and a half.
I'm sorry, Jules. I'm slightly amused. If you wonder why I'm sniggering.
I never wonder why you're giggling, Ken.
It's just I'm watching Colin Edwards doing no prep whatsoever. He's got his feet on the desk, and suddenly Hodges realised that he's going to be doing a Moto2 commentary in a minute. So I better learn a few things. And all the paper, if you can hear it rustling behind me.
Oh, he's in the middle of the press kit. Times
Prescott's
are serious.
Which, tell me you don't find that funny, Jules.
I'm trying not to laugh, Keith. I'm trying to maintain a professional detachment, and I'm failing.
Marc Marquez then, top man, and he will go through to qualifying 2. Remember, we've got FP4 coming up live later here on BT Sport as well. Before we get that, we get the 30 minutes of FP4. Hopefully we will see a reasonably fit Eugene Laverty out for that one, having just sat out FP3 by doctor's orders.
Now looking to the other end of my screen, Michael Jones 4.08 seconds slower than Marc Marquez. I think that's a cracking bit of work by the Australian.
Jack Miller looks a bit stunned there, if you ask me.